I believe that Donald Trump should invoke the Insurrection Act over what is currently going on in Portland and Chicago. Right now, what we are witnessing is Donald Trump attempting to deploy National Guard troops to these jurisdictions, but he's being challenged in the courts. Now, I think this is a half measure. I think the reason why the Trump administration is doing it this way is that before they invoke the Insurrection Act, they are seeking to deploy troops under the protective principle. That is, the executive branch can deploy military for the purpose of protecting federal buildings, not for enforcing domestic law. There's a law called Posse Comitatus, which says that U.S. military cannot enforce domestic law. There's something else called the protective principle. It says, while you can't send out the troops to do this, if they are stationed at a federal building and they are attacked, they can protect federal property. And that is what Trump is doing right now. Now, the courts are blocking him. Trump may win in the courts, but I believe this is a half measure. The Insurrection Act of 1807 states that if local law is not being followed or upheld, Trump can declare an insurrection and thus deploy the military to maintain the rule of law. We have seen things like this in the past. It is not uncommon, nor is it all that shocking, to be honest. Remember when they were desegregating schools and the military was deployed? Well, in this instance, Trump needs to pacify these gang neighborhoods in Chicago. But what we're seeing is resistance from corrupt government officials. And I will stress this. As I stated in my earlier segment, Chicago has been run by Democrats for over 100 years, and they have not dealt with the gangs. So one of the reasons I left and decided to get out of Chicago and move away, because the city is deeply corrupt. They call it the Windy City. And I got to tell you, I found it really funny when a friend of mine, their mother not from Chicago, was like, I don't know if I want to visit Chicago. It's too windy. And then I was like, it's not windy at all. They call it the Windy City because the politicians blow hot air, because they're crooked, they're corrupt. And like a bunch of the past, how many governors in the past 20 years have gone to prison? That's the Illinois pastime. You become governor, you go to jail. Pritzker, I wonder what he's going to fall in, what's going to end up with that guy. But now Trump is floating, invoking the Insurrection Act, and he is being met with serious opposition. But I am going to show you exactly why he should do this. Because we're not just talking about an angry, bitter Trump who wants to deport people. We're talking about gang members putting hits out on ICE agents. You saw that story? We've got Portland literally helping Antifa in a variety of ways, from not arresting them for crimes to arresting their victims, and even trying to use the weight of government to force ICE to remove barricades from their building. And what I mean is the boards they put on their windows to stop bricks and stuff flying through. The city actually said they're in violation. Indeed. Everybody boards up their windows when the riots start. Why target ICE now? If Donald Trump does not take action on this, we are going to be in a much, much darker place. But I admit, my friends, there is no exit. There is only the move. We are playing a game of chess. Trump can sit there and let them dominate the board, or he can make the move himself. NBC News reports Trump floats invoking the Insurrection Act. I believe they have a clip here. Maybe we can play it and see.
Protesters clashing in Chicago and Portland, Oregon. President Trump now says he would consider invoking the Insurrection Act to send the military into those cities if the courts block his deployment of National Guard troops.
We have an Insurrection Act for a reason. I do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up.
That federal law that dates back to 1807 gives the president emergency powers to deploy the military to suppress what he deems as a rebellion or civil unrest. Illinois and its Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker is suing to block Trump's plan to send roughly 200 troops to Chicago, the governor calling it an unconstitutional invasion. But a federal judge has, at least for now, declined to stop that deployment.
What Donald Trump, I believe, is trying to do, incite it so they can bring more troops in invoke the Insurrection Act and militarize Chicago and other major cities.
The president has also attacked Portland as a burning hellhole that he claims has been overtaken by left-wing domestic
Well, I mean, just look at the video that the Today Show is giving you.
terrorists.
Portland is on fire. Portland's been on fire for years.
Targeting the Democratic-led city a day after a federal judge, a Trump nominee, blocked him from sending National Guard troops there.
I think that's all insurrection. I really think that's really criminal insurrection.
Local authorities are forcefully pushing back, saying the chaos is confined to a single downtown city block.
In America, that we don't put the military on our streets unless it's extreme circumstances. Like
shove it up. I was in Ferguson, okay? They put the National Guard on the streets in 2014. And I think they did in Baltimore as well. When riots happen, they send in the troops. This is not shocking to anybody. You're lying.
Invasion or rebellion. And those things, they just don't exist right now in Oregon.
Just last week, President Trump urged America's top generals to use some of those cities as training grounds for the U.S. military. And as a candidate, flirted with invoking the Insurrection Act to suppress unrest. Some Republican leaders are already embracing the president's efforts. Overnight, Texas's Governor Greg Abbott posted this picture of National Guardsmen from his state heading off to other states like Oregon and Illinois to support the president's crackdown. If President Trump moves forward with the Insurrection Act, those National Guard would be granted the same law enforcement powers as local police. Craig.
Peter Alexander from the White House. Peter, thank you.
Yeah. How fun, the Democrats pretending like nothing's going on. Let me tell you a story, my friends. I'm walking down the street in Chicago. There's a guy. I can't remember if he was in front of me or behind me. Some tall dude walks up to my left and starts saying things like, "Hey man, you got any money? Let me get some money." And then I said, "I don't have any money." And he goes, "Come on, I know you got some money in your wallet. I'm trying to do the right thing right now. You know what I mean? I got a knife on me. Maybe you just give me your money." And I said, "I don't have any money, dude." And he was like, "I know you're lying." And I pull out my wallet. My wallet's empty. It's got nothing but an ID. And he's like, "You think I'm stupid? It's in your shoe." And I was like, "Dude, I don't have any money." And as we cross the street, a cop grabs him, slams him into an iron fence, and goes, "Not in my town." And I was like, whoa. Apparently this guy had been trying to shake down other people. That's like daily life in Chicago. I'm driving down 290 with my brother. We get off at Independence Boulevard. And as we are heading north, some guy driving towards us just reaches his hand out the car and bang, fires a shot at us. And we're like, what the? That's Chicago. My friends in high school saw a dude running down the street, shooting behind him, gang fighting. There was a fight that broke out near Kennedy High School. That's the area where I grew up. And everybody ran out of the school right around the time school got. I can't remember what time it was. And they all run about a block down. And we were skating and we were like, "Oh man, look, there's going to be a fight. Let's go watch." These guys get into a fight, which ultimately ends with a dude pulling a gun out from underneath a car that he had hid. And then someone yells, "Strap," and everybody starts running in random directions. I think I was 14 years old. Why is that? Why do we live that way? We live this way because Democrats have abandoned these cities. They want the crime. They like the crime. And I have no problem with National Guard or federal law enforcement patrolling the streets. Because I said it before and I'll say it again. 99% of the time it's going to happen. I'm going to be walking down the street and I'm going to see some DHS guys and I'm going to go, "Howdy." And they're going to go, "Howdy." That's it. That's it. Now, 1% of the time, they're going to say, "How's it going there, sir? Where you headed?" And I'm going to go, "Oh, I'm just going to get some coffee." And they'll be like, "You got ID on you?" And I'll be like, "Sure do." And I'm going to say, "Here you go, sir." And he's going to say, "Okay, well, will you stay safe out there?" I have had bad interactions with cops. I have told stories of cops trying to plant drugs on my car, trying to plant drugs. Oh, man, that happened twice. That's Chicago. But that's Chicago. Federal law enforcement is not Chicago. And it is the problem of Chicago law enforcement where I'm like, bring them in. What do I care? You know, cops in Chicago, not all of them. A lot of them are good dudes. Because my neighborhood was a firefighter and cop area. There are a lot of dirty cops. There was that cop who, was it John Bolger? Was that his name? Electrocuting people. Let me make sure I get the name right. Because, let me make sure I get the, oh, yeah. Was that his name? Oh, no. Whitey Bulger. He was the Irish mob. Who was the guy? No. Who? Let's pull this one. Cop who tortured in Chicago. Did I get it right the first time? John Burge. I always mix these names up. You know what I mean? John Burge. That was his name. He would torture people into false confessions. How about that? Maybe the feds should have come in and shut it down. But wait, let me show you where we're at. Oh boy, it's everybody's favorite, Brandon Johnson, threatening civil war.
To be a part of this collective action, here's what's most important here. We know that this president is not interested in adhering to the law. So we're going to give him something to hold him accountable. And if he violates the law in the city of Chicago, we would do just that, hold him accountable.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
I know you're going to talk about the Texas Guard, Illinois Guard, but can you give us a little bit about what your next steps could be to fight that?
Well, look, our corporate counsel has been in constant communication with our Attorney General for several months now. And I just wanted to offer this up. A couple of years ago, I said very candidly that the right wing in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War. I gotta pause. A rematch? The right wing won. It was the Republican Party that opposed slavery, and they're gonna try and play some games like actually. No. Don't try and play stupid games. The party's switched. Is that what you tell yourself so you can sleep at night? That to sit in right now because the President of the United States of America has declared war on the people of Chicago and people across America.
That's right.
He's more interested in giving billions of dollars to other nations while farmers in urban cities around this country are literally being destabilized. And so whether it's the legal system, whether it's through executive order, or whether it's through the brave women and men who are serving as rapid responders. We literally have people who are volunteering in this city on the southwest side, the northwest side, all over this city to make sure that we're protecting children from being separated from their families. And we're talking about volunteers who are literally putting themselves at risk of being shot and killed by the federal government. And so whether it's the legal system, whether it's our continuous struggle for liberation through organizing,
I just can't. You know what? He's got 10 more seconds. I'll let him go.
and whether it's through executive action or whether it's through law, it would be nice if we actually had lawmakers in Washington that would actually hold this president accountable. And if they won't do it, then the city of Chicago will.
No, you won't. I'm from the southwest side that you so candidly mention, Mayor Johnson. I spent more than half of my life there, and I routinely come back to see family and enjoy the holidays. But I don't think I'll be going back to this crime-ridden, corrupt town as it's descending into chaos. Why? Because you let it. Because you are the worst mayor we've seen in a long time. But don't worry, it's been a sliding scale downward. Now, my friends in these areas don't want to live in crime-ridden, corrupt hellholes, and we always talked about it. My neighborhood on the southwest side voted for Donald Trump. Yeah. So when these people play this stupid game, I say this. Where I'm coming from, send in the troops, Mr. President. Because I look, I don't live there now for a reason. Aside from the gangs, the crime, there's economic reasons. There's bad. It's a sad state of affairs. But I can tell you this: growing up as a kid, as a teenager, I would have much preferred it if there was 2 National Guardsmen. Heck, I'd take 100, just any amount, as opposed to the gangbangers who went around robbing, stealing, looting, etc. I don't want to play these stupid games with these people. Okay. From media, Illinois and Chicago sue to block National Guard deployment. Take swipe at Trump admin over Department of War. Just shut up. Look at this picture. You think these people are at all being bothered in any way by the fact that there's a cop right there? They're not. There was some video where they're like, there are some roofers and ICE showed up and it was waiting for the guys to come off the roof and they wouldn't. So a bunch of lefty activists started protesting, and it's just like, dude, these urban liberals who are protesting this stuff, they're not the majority, but they are amoral, degenerate, and evil. They don't care about what's true. They don't care about what makes a system work. They only care about the short-term satisfaction of fitting in. It takes a lot of work to sustain an economy. There's a finite amount of resources. And here we are watching Democrats extract. And these people in these cities just believe the lies. And that's what terrifies me. On the Trump side of things, you've got a lot of people that are moderate, even somewhat liberal. That's why Trump won. On the left, you have crackpots who will say whatever they have to say to make money. And that's where we are. I'd put it like this. 80% of conservatives are for the cause, 20% are grifters. 80% of liberals are grifters, and 20% are for the cause. And that's why whenever we reach out to some liberal, they're like, how much money will you give me? How much money will you give me? Because they're scumbags. I don't sit here in front of a camera talking about these issues because it makes money. I didn't start this show because it made money. I was actually losing money for a while when I was doing this. And then I remember eventually I started making money. I was like, wow, actually making money doing this. Liberals, other way around. We send out invites and we say, we'd like to invite you to share your views on our show. And they say, how much? And I say, maybe it's just for what you believe in, for your moral convictions. But they don't have any. They simply have but we want a meme and that's it. That's it. So I look at these liberals and they are people who are largely saying, what's going to get me the most views to make the most money? I look at conservatives and they're begging to espouse their views. I don't know. That's like a faith-based thing, I guess. They'll go out and go on missions to preach for the Lord for free because they really believe in it. Me, I do these videos because I am, I don't know what the right word is, offended by the lies and manipulations of the corporate press. Offended. Let me tell you where we are right now. Look at this. Will Chamberlain says, when I say Portland is an open rebellion against the federal government, this is what I mean. Federal authorities have to board up the federal building because the Portland police wouldn't protect it. Instead of helping, the city of Portland issued the feds a zoning violation. They write, while FPS has repeatedly attempted to contact the Portland Police Bureau for assistance, the PPB has often failed to respond to calls for assistance. And even when they have responded, their response has been delayed. These delays and failures to respond exacerbate tensions and leave FPS personnel and civilians in vulnerable positions. In fact, instead of assisting in the protection of the Linquist building, plaintiff city of Portland issued a notice of zoning violation requiring DHS to remove the protective boarding over its windows, exposing the building to further risk of damage and incursion. This is clearly moving towards open rebellion. So what's next? Trump's going to invoke the Insurrection Act. Here's my prediction. If Trump loses in the courts on the deployment of the National Guard, which it looks like he will be, they will likely then invoke the Insurrection Act, creating a new legal challenge for the left. Trump will then deploy the troops. They will then sue, saying he has no authority to invoke the Insurrection Act. It's not rebellion. The lower courts will agree, but the lower courts will disagree with Trump. But the Supreme Court will agree with Trump. I believe that when Trump invokes the Insurrection Act, it's nigh absolute. I mean, he says it. That's the point of the law. Now, of course, the courts can block him, but I don't think the Supreme Court will. They're going to say there's gangs, there's violence, there's shootings, there's vandalism. This is the purpose of the Insurrection Act. So where do we go from here, my friends? Do you think they'll just stop? I don't. Now, I guess here's my hope. That Trump plays the hand that he's got, shuts down these riots. The left engages in some kind of insurgency. I don't want that to happen, I'm saying, but in this scenario, Trump ends up crushing them and there is no further conflict. Because I believe the left will engage in insurgency either way. The best case scenario for all of us is that the left just says, we surrender, we give up, we're leaving. That's it. And then everyone goes back to normal and then we clean up our streets. But I believe there's also a greater possibility that the states continue to defy Trump. And when he invokes the Insurrection Act, they say no. And they call on their men in the National Guard and law enforcement to defy. Many people told me that Newsom will not enforce the mask law against ICE. And I'm sitting here being like, they literally arrested the president. Why wouldn't they? So you tell me, You tell me in the comments. Why wouldn't they do it? Now, I can't see the future. I'm not always right. I have been generally correct in the direction of my predictions. That is, tensions over who controls the National Guard in these states, which is currently ongoing. Tension between the law enforcement and the federal law enforcement. Escalation from the protesters. And, like Michael Malice was asking me, he said, don't you want to be wrong? Don't you hope you're wrong? I'm like, of course. I want to sit in a lounge chair and eat some wings, slop some barbecue sauce all over them, and put on World Poker Tour. Just watch some poker games. And then go like, how could you call that? You had a single pair. Obviously, he was. Did you see the flush on the. That's my sport. I like watching poker and skateboarding. I don't want to deal with conflict and crisis. I'll add this to all the grifter liberals out there. I have been ragged on quite a bit because I always go like, you know what? I'm quitting. I'm not doing this anymore. I did not start this to be anyone's leader or to be in charge of anything. And this is what, I was talking to Michael Malice the other day, and I said, I was asked by Brian Callen if I was emperor, what are 3 things I would fix? I'm like, I honestly have no idea. And I was like, if I woke up and I was emperor, I'd take the crown off and I'd run. And Malice said, that's what Mises said. What would you do if you were made emperor? He says, abdicate. Me too. The sword of Damocles swings low, my friends, and I don't want to have anything to do with that. I ain't in this for the money or anything like that. I'm only doing it, to be completely honest, I have a passion in calling out the lies and the manipulations. And for all the people who say, you can't quit because we need you to do this, I say, okay. And then you get these people who tip think he's so important. Like, I got millions of followers, and they're tweeting and texting at me saying, please keep doing the work you're doing. But I'm getting ready, my friends. One of these days, I'll be in a van down by the river. Smash that like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Stay tuned. We got more segments coming up. We'll see y'all then.